This happened a few weeks ago. I had just moved to this small town after my breakup. I was 35, newly living alone, and working as an IT technician. My apartment was modest, one bedroom in a rundown building. The peeling paint and dimly lit street felt unsettling. I thought it was just the change in my life that made everything feel eerie. Honestly, I've never stopped thinking about it that I tried to settle in that first night. I remember how quiet it was. Almost too quiet. I woke up suddenly. I heard laughter. It was soft but definitely there. A child's laughter echoed through the thin walls. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe it was kids playing outside. I pulled my blanket tighter, trying to ignore it. Over the next few nights, strange things happened. The laughter turned into whispers. They weren't random sounds. I thought I could make out words but couldn't quite understand them. It felt like someone was trying to tell me something. I was starting to question if I was imagining things. My heart raced when I heard those whispers, but I also felt a strange curiosity. Were they actually happening? During the day, I found toys left at my door. Small, colorful things that definitely weren't mine. A plush dinosaur, a tiny truck. Each time I found them, a chill ran down my spine. Who left them? I looked around for some kids, but during the day, the building felt empty. I figured maybe the previous tenant had children. Perhaps they visited sometimes. But then shadows would flit in my peripheral vision. Just little things darting across the room. I could have sworn I saw something standing at the end of the hallway, but it vanished. Then one night, as I lay in bed, I heard them again. The whispers were louder now. My heart was racing, and I felt cold all over. I sat up, straining to listen. "Mark," I thought I heard a voice say. It sent shivers down my spine. My instinct was to call out, but I hesitated. What if it was just my imagination? The next day, I decided I couldn't stay there anymore. I packed up my things in a hurry. I wanted to escape the madness. I was in that apartment for only a week, yet I felt haunted by memories. The whispers, the toys, the shadows, they all kept circling my mind. As I moved out, I glanced back one last time. The apartment door seemed to sway slightly, as if something was watching me. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't shake the feeling that I shared that space with something else. Weeks later, all I do is think about it. I glance over my shoulder sometimes, expecting to see shadows. I still hear those whispers in my head. Were they real? Did those children ever exist, or was it all in my mind? I'll never really know what happened on that cold November night. That mystery still leaves me guessing. I couldn't shake the unease lingering in my mind. So, a few days after I moved into a new place, I decided to explore the town. Maybe the fresh air would clear my head. I walked through the main street, where small shops lined both sides. Most were charming, some looked abandoned. There's a local library that caught my eye. I stepped in. The smell of old books welcomed me in. The librarian was a kind older woman with spectacles perched on her nose. I wandered through the aisles, losing track of time until I found a section on local history. Perhaps there were answers in the stories of this town. As I flipped through a dusty book, a name leapt out at me, Mark Thompson. I froze. Mark. It felt familiar, the name I had heard in that whispered voice. I read on, and my heart raced. Mark was a child, a local boy who had gone missing decades before. The entry detailed the search, the grief from the community, and how eventually, no trace of him was ever found. I was gripped, a chilly sweat covering my palms that I had to know more. I asked the librarian if there were any records or information about him. She frowned, looking away like she didn't want to discuss it. "You should ask Mrs. Henderson," she finally said. "She used to live in that building you moved out from." My heart sank. I remembered my old apartment, a rundown building that had seen better days. Mrs. Henderson was a neighbor I had barely seen. I wolfed down a few hours of time and gathered the courage to knock on her door. When she opened, I was surprised by her bright eyes. She welcomed me in, but her face fell when I mentioned Mark. Her response felt almost instinctual. "He was a sweet boy," she said, her voice shaking. "He loved to play." I pressed for details, asking if she knew anything about the house I had lived in. She hesitated, as if searching for the right words. "Sometimes, children come back after things happen. It's a way for them to connect." My heart raced. What did she mean? Then she suddenly went quiet, as if recalling something painful. "You'll leave children's toys outside if they call for you. It's a sign to let them know you're listening." Before I could question her further, she turned her gaze to the window. The sun was setting, casting an orange glow that felt comforting. But it did nothing to quell my unease. On my way back home, doubt crept in. Could this really have anything to do with me? Returning to my apartment that was now just a memory, I felt that familiar coldness wrap around me. Connect. Mrs. Henderson's word echoed in my mind. I stumbled upon my old doormat beneath the pile of boxes I hadn't unpacked. My heart raced as I reached for the stuffed dinosaur that I had refused to throw away. When I saw it, the tiny truck I had found at my door was resting right beside the toy. This time, it looked slightly worn, as if it had been played with and returned. I stepped back, breath hitching. Suddenly, a loud crash resonated from behind me. The sound shattered the silence, and I swung around, feeling my blood run cold. Someone was definitely in the house. My heart pounded in my ears. I couldn't place the source of that crash, but I could feel an oppressive heaviness in the air. Panic flickered in my mind, urging me to move. I should run. I should get out. But curiosity rooted me in place. I tiptoed down the dimly lit hallway, my breath shallow. The shadows danced along the walls, morphing into shapes that made my skin crawl. Each step felt like an eternity, and I found myself drawn toward the living room where I had heard the noise that I peered around the corner. The room was a mess. My old furniture lay untouched but covered in dust except for one object. My coffee table had books strewn across it, a jumbled pile I didn't remember making. My stomach lurched as a realization hit me: someone had been here. "Hello." I called out, the words sounding weak even to my own ears. No answer. Just the faint creaking of the house settling and the echo of my heart. That I grabbed my phone, scanning the room for anything I could use as a weapon. My hands shook. Just behind the couch, I noticed something shiny. A small silver charm lay glimmering on the floor. I picked it up cautiously, studying it. It was a locket, small, ornate, and definitely not mine. As soon as I opened it, a picture of a young boy stared back at me. My breath caught in my throat. Was this Mark? I didn't have time to figure that out. My gut twisted. I suddenly wished I had never come back here. From behind me, a soft sound broke the silence. The distinct clatter of a toy truck rolling across the floor. My heart raced. I turned slowly, gripping the locket tightly in my palm. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of movement. There, in the kitchen doorway, stood a figure. A child? A boy roughly the age of Mark when he had disappeared. His facial features were blurry and indistinct, as if he was nothing more than a shadow. "Play?" he asked, his voice light and airy, but with a hint of sadness that sent chills down my spine. I froze, unable to respond. My mind screamed to think of a reason to run, to call for help, but the sight of him held me captive. I blinked hard, hoping it was a trick of the light or a mirage from my imagination. But no, he was still there, a child lost in time, waiting. "Will you play with me?" he repeated, his eyes wide and pleading. I felt the weight of his gaze on me, and a sudden surge of determination flickered. I thought of Mrs. Henderson's words about leaving toys outside, about listening. My instinct was to say no, to scream and run. But what if this wasn't the end? So, in a shaky voice, I replied, "What do you want to play?" In that moment, everything shifted. A flicker of hope. A potential connection. As I took a hesitant step toward him, darkness pooled at the edges of my vision. I was no longer sure if I was in control of my own actions. "Together," he whispered, "we can find the others." That's when everything went dark. I gasped as light flooded back into my vision. I wasn't in my living room anymore. The familiar furniture was gone. I found myself in a dimly lit forest, tall trees casting long shadows that swayed above me. My heart raced, but the boy was still there, standing a few feet away. "Where are we?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Where we play," he replied, his eyes bright with something that felt both hopeful and desperate. That I scanned the surroundings, taking in the thick underbrush and the distant rustling sounds. The scent of damp earth filled my nostrils. It felt surreal. I blinked again, trying to force myself to wake from what had to be a dream. But the chill in the air felt too real, too biting against my skin. "Why do you want to play?" I asked, wishing I could grasp the meaning behind this strange encounter. "Find them first," he insisted, a frown appearing on his delicate features. "I lost them." "Find who?" My stomach twisted with anxiety. I didn't want to be trapped in this world. "Come." With that, he took a step forward, his small hand reaching for mine. My instincts screamed that I should pull away, but something compelled me forward. I took his hand, and the moment I did, an electric sensation coursed through me. It felt as if we were connected in some way I couldn't comprehend. Slowly, we began to walk deeper into the trees. I noticed glimpses of color flitting between the trunks, red and blue shapes of toys abandoned in the wilderness. An errant doll lay face down in the dirt, a toy truck dented and weathered. It only deepened the pit in my stomach. "This is a game?" I asked, the unease creeping back. He nodded earnestly, his little face a mix of excitement and fear. "You have to find the last toy. Then we can play." "Last toy?" My voice was barely above a whisper. The dread in my chest palpitated. "Why can't we just go home?" His expression darkened. "They can't." "Not until it's finished," he replied, his words heavy with a gravity so deep it made my bones ache. Suddenly, I heard a rustling in the underbrush. My pulse quickened. I turned my head sharply, half expecting something to leap out at me. The boy tightened his grip on my hand, his eyes wide and unblinking. "I'm scared," I admitted. "Don't let go," he said softly. "They can come." My stomach dropped further. Who were they? The feeling of being watched settled like a weight on my shoulders. I could feel unseen eyes boring into me. That's when I saw it, a flash of color beneath a cluster of bushes and weeds. A toy. It sat nestled among the creeping vines, its surface gleaming faintly in the dim light. Tension coiled around me, blending fear and a sliver of hope. I stepped forward, heart pounding. Every instinct screamed for me to turn and run, but I couldn't abandon this boy, this search. I crouched down to pick it up. "Is this it?" But before I could examine it closely, a low growl echoed through the trees, stopping me in my tracks. The boy tugged harder at my arm. "Run!" he shouted, but it felt like the forest itself had come alive, closing in around us. That I looked back at the approaching darkness, terror crashing over me like a wave. What had I stepped into? And then I knew, this was only the beginning. The boy yanked on my arm again, and I stumbled back to my feet. We sprinted away from the noise, but the growl lingered in the air, curling around us like smoke. My heart thumped frantically in my chest, drowning out everything else. What were we running from? "Look for the path," he shouted, his voice barely cutting through the panic in my head. A faint hint of light flickered ahead, illuminating a narrow trail winding through the underbrush. Somehow, it felt like our only chance. We darted toward it, my breath hitching as branches clawed at my arms, trying to hold us back. Faster! We have to go. His eyes were wide with urgency, and I could see fear written all over his small face that we burst into the clearing, panting and wild-eyed. The light ahead pulsed like a heartbeat, promising escape. But as I crossed the threshold into the bright space, I skidded to a stop. I couldn't breathe for a moment. Before me lay a twisted campsite, abandoned yet eerily inviting. Tents half-pitched, scattered boxes, and a dozen strange, colorful toys littered the ground. They glinted under the light from a flickering campfire in the center, the flames dancing as if they were alive. "What is this place?" I murmured, almost to myself. "Is this part of the game?" He frowned and shook his head. "We're not safe here." A wave of confusion washed over me. The toys, gleaming with life, felt too bright against the dimness of the trees just beyond the clearing. I leaned closer, feeling the pull of curiosity. Maybe finding something here would help us understand what was happening. "Wait," I whispered, not wanting to draw attention but also hoping for an answer. I stepped towards a bright yellow ball that sat nestled among the other forgotten items. Maybe this is the last toy. But just as my fingers brushed against its surface, another growl erupted from the forest, more menacing this time. The boy instinctively hid behind me, his small frame trembling. "They know we're here," he whispered. "We have to go." I snatched my hand back, panic flooding my mind. "But we can't leave without we have to." He interrupted. "If they find us here, they will take us." My heart sank. I turned to look at him, searching for assurance, but all I found was fear mirrored back at me. I glanced back at the toys. They looked innocent enough, but a sense of dread tightened around my throat. I didn't know what the boy meant by "they," but something was not right that I backed away from the toys. "Okay, let us go," I said, forcing myself to sound braver than I felt. We turned to leave the clearing, but the growls sounded again, closer than before. "What if we can't find the last toy?" I asked, breathless and terrified, as we retraced our steps toward the shadows of the trees. "We have to try," he said, determination flooding his voice even through the fear. "Before they come." And just like that, as we entered the darkness again, I felt as if the forest were inhaling around us, ready to close in. I cast one last glance back at the campfire flickering like a beacon in the night. I had a horrible feeling that whatever was hidden in that light had something to do with our survival, but there was no time to dwell. We pushed deeper into the trees, the sounds of the forest shift behind us, each step weighted with urgency. Wherever this place led, I knew it was going to take everything I had left just to stay alive. It dawned on me, then. This wasn't just about finding the toy anymore. It was about finding a way out before it was too late. The gripping darkness closed around us as we fled deeper into the forest. Each breath I took felt more like a gasp, an urgent plea for air, but fearing it would draw whatever hunted us closer. I could feel the boy gripping my hand tightly, his small fingers cold and unyielding. "Do you think they saw us?" I asked, matching my pace to his as we weaved through the trees. "I don't know." He glanced nervously over his shoulder. "We need to keep moving." I didn't want to admit that my legs felt like lead, but I pressed on. The trees loomed higher, their branches tangled like fingers reaching for us. In the distance, the growl faded, replaced by an eerie silence that made my skin crawl. I realized that wasn't safer, it felt worse. Suddenly, something sparkled on the ground ahead, catching my eye. I hesitated. It looked like a piece of glass, but before I could get closer, the boy tugged at my arm. "Don't stop." We pushed forward, the quiet now thick and suffocating. Every rustle of leaves or snap of twigs felt like it could be followed by a terrifying roar. Then, just as we rounded a bend, we stumbled upon a small wooden structure half hidden by the underbrush. It must have been an old shed, its door ajar and creaking ominously. I hesitated for a moment, torn between fear and curiosity. Was it safe inside? Or would it just trap us? Should we check it out? I asked, my heart racing. "We can't let them find us," he said, then quickly added, "but there might be something we need inside. We have to know." His words echoed in my mind. It was exactly what I was thinking, but the dread of uncertainty weighed heavy. If we stayed in the open, it would only be a matter of time before we were discovered. "Okay," I whispered. Loosely gripping his hand, I stepped toward the structure. I pushed the door, and it creaked as it opened. Darkness loomed inside. I could barely make out the outline of shelves stacked with dusty items, a broken wheelbarrow, a couple of rusted tools, and something else. Something small, shimmering. "Stay close," I instructed, feeling the boy's breath quicken beside me. We stepped cautiously inside, the air thick with the smell of damp earth and wood. We moved deeper into the darkness, and the shimmer grew brighter. It looked like a toy, a small metal soldier, with paint chipped away and its tiny helmet glinting in the faint light coming from a small window. My heart skipped, the thrill of discovery mingling with anxiety. "Look," I said, reaching for it. But as my fingers closed around the little soldier, I felt the ground tremble beneath me, like a warning. The boy gasped, pulling back. "Something's coming." Before I could react, the shadows shifted just beyond the door. Something moved, dark and intangible. The growl exploded from outside the shed, sending chills racing down my spine. I yanked the soldier closer, my heart pounding against my chest. "That noise," I breathed. "What are they?" But before I could gather my thoughts, the door slammed shut with a force that rattled the walls. The boy let out a cry, and my stomach dropped as everything went dark. The only sound now was the pounding of my heart and the fierce breaths of the boy beside me. Then, a faint light pulsed in the corner of the room, casting long, eerie shadows. I realized then that we were not just hiding. We were trapped. "What do we do now?" I whispered, fear clawing at my throat. And that was when I remembered the soldier in my hand, the very item that could either save us or seal our fate. I gripped the soldier tighter, its cool metal grounding me in the spiraling uncertainty. "What if it's enchanted?" I whispered, mostly to myself. The boy's eyes widened, fear and curiosity battling for dominance. "Enchanted?" he echoed, his voice barely above a whisper. "We don't know what it can do," I replied, searching the dark corners of the shed for any signs of danger. I had read enough stories to wonder if there was more to this soldier than just rusted metal. Just then, the pulsing light flickered, illuminating sections of the shed, a jagged pile of tools, old and forgotten, shadows shaped like claws creeping across the walls. That I could hear the growling outside, low and vicious, like a beast stalking its prey. "We have to do something," the boy urged, his grip on my arm tightening. I felt his fear wash over me, but I wasn't ready to break. "Not yet. Maybe if we put the soldier down, it will calm whatever's out there," I suggested, though doubt gnawed at me. "What if it held the key to our escape?" "No. Don't." The boy's voice cracked in panic, like glass ready to shatter. "What if it makes it worse?" He was right. I had no idea how this worked, or if it even worked at all. The growl grew more intense, pressing closer. "Then what do we do?" I asked, desperate for direction. His eyes flickered to the shed's door, and I understood the silent message. "We need to find a way out." I scanned the room, looking for something, anything that could help us. The old wooden door was heavy and could hold against whatever prowled outside, but it wouldn't save us for long. Then my gaze fell on an old window, the glass cracked but still barely intact. I rushed to it, my heart plummeting as I pushed against the frame. It was stuck. I jiggled it, heat from my frustration bubbling. I needed to shove my fears aside, to break this panic and act. "Help me!" I shouted, zipping back to the boy. Together, we pulled at the window, grunting with effort until finally it creaked open. The chill night air poured into the shed, carrying with it a faint echo of the forest around us, but still, the growl lingered, closer now. I took one last look at the soldier, its surface catching the light. If this is our chance, we can't wait. We go. With that, I squeezed through the window, urging the boy ahead of me. His small frame slipped out with more ease, but we both stumbled into the dark outside, the soft soil cushioning our fall. "Where do we go now?" he whispered, once we hit the ground. I climbed to my feet, scanning the trees, their shapes twisted against the night sky. The growl was louder, a reminder that our time was short. "That way," I said, pointing deeper into the trees. If we could just avoid whatever lurked behind us, maybe we'd make it to safety. We sprinted away from the shed, the glow of the metal soldier in my pocket now oddly comforting. I could feel the fear gripping me again, squeezing tighter with each step. And that's when I saw a shadow flit between the trees, not far from us. My breath caught. "Run!" But even as we bolted, I felt an unsettling realization creeping in. Someone, or something, was hunting us. And we had just tripped the first alarm. The trees loomed tall and unnatural around us, their branches clawing at the moonlight like skeletal hands. We ran deeper into the forest, my mind racing with questions and fears. The growl behind us was growing closer, threading itself into the very air we breathed. "Keep going," I urged the boy, glancing back for a heartbeat. He stumbled slightly, but pushed forward, eyes wide with terror. I didn't want to think about what might be chasing us. Whatever it was, I had a sinking feeling that it was not just an animal. We zigzagged through the underbrush, desperate to lose our pursuer. Every crack of a twig made me jump, every rustle of leaves sent my heart racing. Then, as we reached a small clearing, a flash of movement caught my eye. By instinct, I ducked. "Over here!" I shouted, pulling the boy behind a thick tree trunk, hoping to hide from our unknown stalker. My breath was ragged, I was trembling all over. "Did you see it?" the boy gasped, peering around the tree. I shook my head, trying to concentrate on the sounds around us. The growl was now punctuated by something else, a sharp clicking sound that set my teeth on edge. "It's close," I whispered, straining to hear anything that could give us a clue about what was after us. Suddenly, out of nowhere, I felt something sharp and cold against my hand, the soldier. It had slipped from my pocket when I ducked, the metal felt warm now, its surface glowing faintly. "Maybe it is enchanted," I murmured, suddenly filled with an odd sense of hope. I turned the soldier over in my hands. There had to be a reason we found it. Maybe it could help us somehow. "There's something in the clearing," the boy whispered again, voice quivering. I peeked around the tree, heart pounding against my chest. There it was. A low, hulking silhouette moving under the moonlight. It was monstrous, a creature straight from my nightmares. "It's huge," I breathed, taking a step back. "What do we do?" I don't know," the boy stammered, his voice trembling with dread. "Can we use the soldier? Can it fight it off?" I considered the idea. What if it was indeed enchanted, a defender waiting for the right moment to spring to life? "Maybe," I said, voice barely above a whisper. But I don't know how suddenly, the creature turned its head, eyes glinting like polished stone, locking onto us. My heart raced. In that moment of eye contact, I felt a ripple of power surge from the soldier in my hand, warming my palm. "Now!" I shouted instinctively, raising the soldier high over my head as if it were a sword. The growl transformed into a roar, a sound filled with rage. The creature lunged forward, monstrous and terrifying, its claws raking the air, then everything went dark. A blinding light erupted from the soldier, engulfing the clearing in a halo of radiance. The boy gasped beside me, and I felt a sudden surge of hope mix with fear. What had I done? Could we escape this creature? But then, just as quickly as the light appeared, it began to fade. The creature paused, its eyes widening, confused by the sudden shift. I braced myself, expecting the worst, that is when I noticed something glaring at me from the shadows. Another figure emerged, and my breath caught again. Someone else was in the woods. The creature looked between me and the newcomer, confusion written on its monstrous face. And just like that, I realized we weren't alone after all. The figure stepped into the light, and I blinked in disbelief. It was a woman, dressed in a long, tattered cloak. Her hair flowed down her back like a river of shadows, and her eyes glowed with an intensity that seemed almost unnatural. The creature paused, its muscles tense, weighing the two of us, the terrified boy beside me and this enigmatic figure now confronting it. "Stay close to me," I whispered urgently, tugging the boy inward, trying to shield him with my body. The woman raised a hand, and something flickered in her palm, a small, shimmering orb of light. As it illuminated her face, I could see the determination in her expression. She didn't seem afraid, if anything, she radiated confidence. "Fanger," she commanded, her voice slicing through the tension like a knife. The creature turned toward her, its growl wavering into something softer, like the quiet rumble of thunder before a storm. It seemed to recognize her. "Who are you?" I blurted out, still feeling the heat from the soldier pressed tightly in my grip. My mind spun with 1,000 questions, but I had to keep my focus. The growl returned, deep and threatening, but now it had shifted somehow, as if the creature wasn't sure who the real enemy was. "Not what you think," the woman said, her eyes still fixed on the beast. "This forest is alive, and so is Fanger. He is not here to harm you. Not if you don't threaten him." Her words echoed in my head, but I couldn't let my guard down. "Then why was it chasing us?" The boy clung to my arm, trembling. "Fanger is a guardian," she replied, glancing at the creature whose hackles were slowly lowering. "He protects this land from those who seek to exploit its magic." "And you?" She hesitated, studying me intently. "You wield the soldier. It has chosen you." I looked at the soldier in my hand, the metal almost pulsing with warmth. Could that be true? But the forest was dark and twisted, full of lurking dangers. "Why should we trust you?" I said, my voice shaky. Suddenly, the ground shook. Fanger roared again, but this time it was out of fear, a deep rumble that resonated in my bones. The woman turned sharply. "We're not safe here. More will come." I didn't understand what she meant, but I knew we had to act. I glanced at the boy. His eyes were wide with confusion and fear. "What do we do?" "Follow me," the woman instructed, darting back into the shadows. Fanger hesitated, but with a gentle nod from the woman, he lowered himself, allowing us to climb onto his back. I had no idea whether we could trust any of them, but my instincts urged me forward. With one last look back at the clearing, I climbed on. The boy followed, heart racing, and within moments, we were moving fast, the canopy above us shifting and swaying, the world blurring into a rush of shadow and light. "Wait!" I shouted as we sped away. "Who are you? Why are you helping us?" She turned her head slightly, and I caught a glimpse of her fierce gaze. "Because you're part of a greater story now, and we don't have much time." My heart raced, and I realized this was just the beginning. But I didn't have answers, just more questions slamming into me like branches against skin. Then I saw something lurking in the distance, a glint of eyes, far more than in the clearing. And suddenly, I knew we were not out of danger yet. I awoke in a fractured state of consciousness, the world around me hazy. I blinked against the aftermath of light, a warmth wrapping around me like a heavy blanket. The forest had vanished, and I found myself in a familiar place, the corner of my old apartment living room. My heart raced as I tried to make sense of my surroundings. How had I returned? The plush dinosaur and tiny truck lay on the floor, right where I had left them. I felt the weight of the locket in my pocket, and something stirred deep within my gut, a slow creeping terror. It was a dream, I whispered to myself, half-heartedly hoping it was true. Was it the effects of some residue from that strange encounter? I stood up, swaying slightly. The eerie quiet of the room settled in around me, amplifying the echoes of soft whispers that had haunted me before. "Mark," they whispered, soft yet insistent. The sound sent shivers racing down my spine. My heart pounded, and suddenly, I was engulfed in memories of the boy and the creature. What had occurred back there? The creatures of the shadows, the promise of finding something until we had fled into darkness. The soldiers and broken toys, pieces of unfinished tales lost in time. And then, just as it had begun, it had ended, leaving me standing here. But what about the boy? Did he escape too? Or was he still trapped within those twisted woods? Did Faulkner protect him? I glanced towards the window, sunlight flooding into the room. Nothing looked out of place, but the unease curled inside my chest, forming a tight fist that wouldn't release. I stepped to the door, heart racing, desperate to know if the world was still as it had been. But as I stepped outside, I found my heart plummet. The street was packed with children, all laughing freely as they played with colorful toy trucks and dinosaurs. They darted across the pavement like tiny phantoms, their laughter echoing in the air. Can they hear it? I thought, wondering if I would feel that childish presence among them. I hesitated, taking it all in. Had they always been there but hidden to me? Or were they remnants of a different reality, fragments of Marquez' world swirling into existence? I chuckled nervously at the thought until the laughter blurred into whispers again, almost deafening. I turned to seek some semblance of sanity in their innocent faces. An older woman appeared among them, not just any woman, but Mrs. Henderson. Her eyes met mine, filled with a knowing warmth that sent chills down my spine. "You're back," she said simply. I felt the weight of her gaze, understanding layered within. Did we? I couldn't find the right words. They're still here. I looked back at the children, catching a glimpse of a small figure, indistinct but familiar to me. It was the boy, peering curiously, as shadows flickered around him. "They never really leave," she said, unfazed by my confusion. "They're part of this place, just as you are now." My chest tightened further as I felt the distance clinging to my soul. What had I entered? What consequences lingered in the folds of existence now intertwined with mine? But why? I insisted, desperate for clarity. Mrs. Henderson only smiled gently, as if she held all the answers just out of reach. "The stories continue, Mark. They always will." And just like that, something deep inside me began to shift, the hollow fear replaced by an unsettling curiosity. I turned back to that boy, the one who had reached for answers, who had been left behind. I wondered if he would be all right if we ever really had a way back. The whispers faded momentarily, leaving the taste of unfulfilled promises on my tongue. Would I be free of this place, or were we all still playing a game of tragic connections and unfinished stories? I took a deep breath and stepped towards the children, curiosity beckoning me forward. Maybe, just maybe, I could forge a connection worth pursuing. The thought danced in the corners of my mind, a flicker of flickering shadows beneath the warmth of the sunlight. As I joined the children, laughter washing over me, I realized I would never truly leave, surrounded forever by the echoes of what was and what could be, realities swirling endlessly like a kaleidoscope of secrets I'm destined to uncover.